Alright, today we're going to be learning about the dropout method. So, I remember I told you guys there are three ways to solve systems of equations. Hey, the first day we learned about graphing, where you graph both equations and see where they cross. Wherever they cross, that is your solution. Last cycle we talked about substitution. Substitution is when we take one variable and replace it into the other equation and then solve for that variable. And so that is substitution. And then so today we're going to talk about dropout, where one of your variables is actually going to drop out or go away in the process of solving the problem, which you'll see here in a second. Remember, graphing you use when both equations are solved for y. Substitution you use when one equation is solved for itself. And then dropout, as you can see these two problems up here, notice how neither of them are solved for a variable, and that's when you want to use dropout. So we're gonna scroll down to the steps for dropout. Now, if your equations look like this, or they're separate like this, one of the first things you need to do is line them up. So we need them to be one to be on top of the other. So I'm going to simply just write the first equation over the other equation. So all I did was rewrite that equation over here. You're going to draw a line underneath it. Once you notice that you need to use dropout, this is what's going to happen. Okay, you're going to put a line under it, and one of the things you need to notice is right here. Notice how the y's will cancel out. If I were to add them together, if I were to take negative y and positive y, they would cancel out, and that's the signature for dropout. We need our equations to line up like this to where they will drop out. So all you do is simply just add. All you do is just add straight down. So I have 1x. I have x plus x is 2x. My y's are going to cancel out. Equals, and then I add straight down over here. 7 plus 11 is 18. And then you just solve. Divide by 2. Divide by 2. X equals 9. Okay, and in the exact same way that we did it with substitution, okay, how are we going to figure out what our y is when we know what x is? Okay, if you guessed that we need to plug it back in, well, that's correct. So we're going to take x equals 9 and we're going to plug it back into our equation. I like to work with equations that don't have any negatives, so if you can avoid that, and that's always good. So I'm going to take this x equals 9 and I'm going to put it into this bottom equation here. So what it's going to look like is now 9 plus y equals 11. I then solve by subtracting 9. Cancels, leaving me with y equals 2. Okay? And just like before, we have our x, we have our y, but our answer needs to be in the form of an ordered pair or coordinate. So x first, then y, and that is our answer. So you notice how dropout is fairly simple. It does get more difficult, and we'll get to those towards the end here. So just a recap of the steps. Okay, if they're not lined up, like if they're separate like this, line them up so that they're one on top of the other. Look for a variable that if you were to add it together would cancel out or drop out. Okay, and then just add straight down. X and x made 2x. These canceled. 7 and 11 made 18. And then just solve for that variable. Once you get that variable, then substitute it back into the equation, okay, and then solve for the other variable. Okay, let's get a little bit more practice, and let's try the first problem on the next page. Okay, Notice how in this equation you have your y's, which if we were to add them together would cancel out. Okay, and say you have a positive 2y and a negative 2y, those would cancel out. So what we're going to do is we're going to add straight down. Okay, 1x and 3x make 4x. Our y's are going to cancel, equals 5 plus 7, which is 12. Then divide both sides by 4. X equals 3. Now that we know what x is, we then can plug it back into either equation. Remember, I like to work with ones that deal with less negatives, so I'm actually going to plug it into the top one, so that now I have 3 plus 2y equals 5. Solve by subtracting 3. 2y equals 2. Divide both sides by 2. And y equals 1. Now that I have x and y, I then can write my answer as an ordered pair, x first. There you go. Simple as that. Okay, we're going to do one more, and then I'm going to let you try a couple here on your own. So again, notice our equations are stacked up, and notice again that our y's can cancel. Now that's not always going to happen, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but in this case it's already set up for it. Okay, so we're going to add straight down. 3x and 2x make 5x. Our y's will cancel out, and that's not always the y's too. You can have the x's cancel as well. Okay, and then 3 plus 12 is 15. Divide by 5, divide by 5, x equals 3. Okay, now that I know what x is, okay, I'm going to take this and I'm going to plug it in to the top equation. You can plug it into either one, doesn't matter, just like when we did substitution. Okay, so now I'm going to plug it in there. So now I have the 3, but then it's 3 times x, so it's actually 3 times my 3 plus 3y equals 3. A lot of 3's. Okay, all I did, okay, just so you see this, I plugged in the 3 just in for the x. So I still have this 3 in front. That's why it's right here. And then you just multiply it to the 3 you substituted. So 3 times 3, okay, is 9 plus 3y equals 3. Solve by subtracting the 9 over. That cancels. So 3y equals negative 6. Divide both sides by the 3. And y equals negative 2. Again, now that I have both the x and the y, I can write my ordered pair, x first. There's my answer. Okay. All right, you can always back up, fast forward, whatever you need to do. Back up if you don't understand certain steps or what to do. If you're stuck in a problem, you can always revert back to the video and watch this again. So let's scroll down. I'm going to let you go ahead and try number 3 on your own. Go ahead and pause the video, try it out, solve the problem, and then check your answer once you're done. Alright, so there's the answer. So I'm going to go here just step by step showing you kind of what I did. So you notice first that the y's are going to cancel out here. So I added straight down. 8 and 9 make 17. Your y's will cancel out. 22 plus a negative 39. If you just do that in your calculator, or if you can know that 22 plus 39 is really just 22 minus 39, you still add them. 22 plus 39 is negative 17. And then divide both sides by the 17. You get negative 1. I like to deal with, again, where there's no negatives. The answer is negative, that's okay, but I want to deal with variables that are not negative here. But again, it doesn't matter. So I plugged it into the x right here. So there's still a 9 in front of it. That's why that 9 is here. And I put in the -1 in for x right here. So 9 times -1 is -9 plus the 6y equals -39. Then I added the 9 over. So -39 plus 9 is -30. Divided both sides by the 6. And I got -5. So my answer is -1, -5. Now go ahead and try 4 on your own. Pause the video and then check your answer. Okay, so here's your answer to number 4. So again, up here, notice the x's this time are the ones that cancel out. And so those canceled out. And then I'm going to take -4y and add it to 3y. I have -1y. And then 14 plus a -11 is 3. Then I go ahead and divide both sides by -1. And y equals -3. Again, it doesn't matter which equation you plug it into. I could have plugged it into this y, or I could have gone up here and plugged it into this y. It doesn't matter. I chose the bottom one. There is no wrong answer there. So I put it in for the y. Keep in mind that there is a 3 in front of it. That's why this 3 is here. Then I plugged in the -3 in for y. So everything comes down. So I have the -2x plus 3, then y, which was -3, equals -11. 3 times -3 is -9. And then I solved by adding 9 over, getting -2. So I have -2x equals -2 divided by the -2, and got x equals 1. -2 over -2 is 1. So my answer, 1, -3. Okay, we're going to go and scroll down here. Let me do these ones. 5 and 6 are what we call special cases. Remember what happened in substitution? You'll see what happens. What happens here in substitution. If you notice, and you look at your x, and you look at your y, notice how, oh wait, hey, the x's can cancel out. Oh, wait a minute, the y's can cancel out as well. And so what you get here is both the x's cancel and the y's cancel. Both of them cancel. I'm left with 0 equals 1 plus -5 is -4. And it comes to this. Remember we talked about this with substitution. Okay, this right here is an untrue statement. What does that mean? That's right. No solution. Okay, both my variables dropped out and I got an untrue solution. So that means that there is no solution. And the same can be said over here for number 6. Notice that the x's are opposites, and so they cancel. Well, look at the y's. They also cancel. But in this case, you get 0 equaling -9 plus 9 is 0. I get actually a true statement. Therefore, if I get a true statement, it is all real solutions, or all solutions, infinite solutions, however you want to word that. All real solutions, all solutions. So untrue, no solution, and true gets all solutions, or all real solutions. Now, you might ask, well, these are easy, Mr. G. We go up here. These are easy. The variables already cancel out. I mean, are they always going to be set up to where they always just drop out? The answer is no. Actually, probably most of the time, they're not going to be set up to where you can just automatically drop things out. So that's where 7 and 8 come in. Here's where it's going to take you to use your brain a little bit more for these type of problems. Notice here that if I look at these problems, Mr. G, they don't drop out. There's nothing that drops out. If I add those, that doesn't drop out. If I add these, that doesn't drop out. So none of my variables drop out. What do I do? Okay, here is what I like to call forcing a dropout, where you can actually make things drop out if you want them to. For example, look at your x's, okay? If this is a 4x, if I wanted this to drop out, if I wanted my x's to drop out and this was a 4x, what would this need to be in order for this to drop out? Remember, if this is 4x, what would this need to be to make them drop out? Okay, if you said negative 4x, then that's correct. If this were 4x, this would have to be negative 4x for it to drop out. But we can do something about that. What would I need to multiply this by to get it to be negative 4? Yeah, that's right. It's you can multiply this by 2. If I were to multiply this by 2, I'd get negative 4. And then they would cancel out. So here's what you can do. You can actually, and I'm going to zoom in for this just so I have some room here. You can actually just multiply by 2. But when I multiply by 2, I need to multiply everything by that 2. At least in this equation. I don't need to do anything up here, just in this bottom equation. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite it below. 2 times negative 2 is negative 4x. 2 times 3y is a positive 6y. 2 times negative 8 is negative 16. I no longer need this equation because I just rewrote it in a new way. So I don't need this equation anymore. Now, if I look at this, now my x's are going to drop out. And they do. Again, we just do what we did above and add straight down. My x's, okay, my x's are going to drop out. Let me zoom out again so I have some room here. Okay, so the x's are going to drop out. I add straight down. Negative 5y plus 6y is 1y. 10 plus a negative 16 is negative 6. And then, if you wanted to, you just divide by 1, which is just the same thing. Y equals negative 6. And again, just like we did above, you could take this negative 6 and I could plug this into either one of these equations. I could plug it into this one, or I can go up here and plug it into this one. I like to plug it in where I don't have any negatives, so I'm going to plug it into this one right here. So let's just show that. I'm going to plug this in right there. Just remember, there is a 6 in front of it. So when I rewrite this, I have negative 4x plus the 6. Then I substitute my negative 6 in for y equals negative 16. 6 times negative 6, well, this is going to come down. But 6 times negative 6 is negative 36 equals negative 16. Solve by adding the 36. Negative 16 plus 36 is 20. So negative 4x equals that. Divide by negative 4. Divide by negative 4. X equals negative 5. I have both my x and my y, so just like I've always done, x first, then the y, and there is my solution. So that is a forced dropout. So if you get into a situation where you can't drop out, you can always try to multiply things to try to force them to drop out. And sometimes you may need to multiply both equations by something. And we'll talk about that if we come across it in class. We'll talk about how to do that. But so let's look at number 8. It's our last problem. I'm going to shift over here so I have enough room. Let's draw a little line through here so we don't confuse anything. So we look at this initially. You might think, hey, Mr. G, but the x's drop out. And I would say, no, that's not true. Okay, first of all, if I were to add these together, they're not going to cancel. 3x and 3x is not 0. 3x and 3x is 6x. So that does not drop out. So we need to force a dropout. Okay? And I could do my x's pretty easily, or you could do your y's. It doesn't matter. Okay? If this was 3x, what would this need to be? Well, it would need to be negative 3x. So I can actually just multiply everything by a negative 1 and get this to be negative 3x. The other alternative is if this was 2y, what would this need to be? It would need to be negative 2y. So I could also multiply everything in here by 2. That way this becomes negative 2y, and they cancel. So either way, it doesn't matter what you do. I think the easiest thing to do is to simply just multiply by negative 1. So we're going to multiply everything in here by negative 1, negative 1, negative 1. Negative 1 times 3x is negative 3x. Negative 1 times negative y is a positive 1y. And then negative 1 times 10 is negative 10. Again, you no longer need this equation. Okay. And then you can just add straight down. Notice how your x's are going to cancel. 2y and 1y make 3y. And negative 5 and negative 10 plus a negative 10 equals negative 15. If you don't believe me, check your calculator. Divide by 3, divide by 3, y equals negative 5. Okay. Then you can plug it back in. Right? Either one, it doesn't matter. I'm going to plug it in. Let's just make it more difficult on ourselves, and let's plug it into that top one. It's not going to make any difference. So what I'm left with is 3x plus the 2, keep in mind there's a 2 in front, then my y equals negative 5. Okay, 2 times negative 5 is negative 10. And then I'm going to, let's see, and then I'm going to add 10. Goes in like that. So I'm left with 3x equals 5. Divide by 3, divide by 3. And in this case, we got a fraction. I don't see you getting a fraction on a test or anything like that, but sometimes that happens. Saying it doesn't change anything. X first, then my y, and that is the solution. Okay? You're obviously watching this video, and you should have watched these videos either in class or during your e-learning. If you have any questions about anything or run across anything in your homework, please don't hesitate to send me a message, email me, and I'll try to respond promptly so that you guys can get your stuff done. But that is what dropout method is. All right? Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, again, send me a message or email me.